And have you ever been in a place where you're just kind of opening up your eyes and you're looking around and you realize that you don't really have a place to land? That it's like everything is up in the air and you're just, you want to put your feet down, but you don't quite know where the floor is? We would suggest to you that energetically, that's almost the times that you are involved in at the moment. The reflections of your reality are such that so many of the foundational things that you have counted on in your lives are becoming much more tenuous, are becoming much less tangible. And we have been telling you for a number of months now, without going into great detail, how it was going to become necessary for you all to begin to rely upon each other in such a way as to, either create a microcosmic community around yourself or be able to find a way to interact with others in such a way as to, what shall we say, move beyond a lot of the dynamics of safety and security that you had developed for yourself through the combinations of the, what shall we say, the structures of reality that have been in existence for quite some time. You can probably trace the dynamics of this energy all the way back to World War I or thereabouts if you wish to, but the truth of the matter is this last phase really has come from the end of World War II until now. And it has been a dynamic of a certain dynamic of arrogance in a way, a certain understanding of, most of yourself, most of your dynamics. If you looked at your world and you looked at the dynamics of the world wars that were occurring, you would say that, well, you won. And so with the victor goes the spoils in a way. And so even though you have not been cognizant of it, in fact, the dynamics of the world that exists right now has been more from the dynamics of the lack of direction. In other words, if you remember that we often have talked about in the past the fact that there are basically two kinds of people in the world. There are the live and let live kinds of people, of which we would suggest that's all of you, and then there's those others that really seek to control all you live and live people. The live and let live is, don't hurt yourself, don't hurt anybody else, and if you're really weird, don't get it on me. So, it's that dynamic of energy, that's dynamic of progressivism, of acceptance, of being willing to open to people's individuality, people's quirks, people's differences within those dynamics, and to be able to celebrate that dynamic. And that was a movement and is a movement into individuation. Now, if you look at the dynamics of your lives, you know how many of you are involved in singular situations where you are completely reliant upon yourselves. And so, because of that dynamic, it's a whole extra movement, and it's a whole dynamic of energy. Those of you that are involved in relationships, it is much easier for you sometimes, because the dynamic is, if you are on the same page. As a couple, then you can begin to work together and create a dynamic of a synergy. And that's one of the reasons that we are wishing you all to engage with each other more. It's because you can create a dynamic. Hello, Brian. You can create a dynamic of synergy. You can create a dynamic of an exponential energy. Now that doesn't mean you have to be in relationship to do that. All you have to do is to have a common goal. That common goal can be as simple as making life easier for yourself and others by, interacting, by communicating, by understanding that the in so many circumstances of your lives, you find that the tendency is to face a problem by going closer and closer and closer, and you think that you have to concentrate more and more, when in fact the actual answer is to step back from the dynamic, get a perspective on it, get an understanding from someone else's point of view, see the dynamic as it really is. But if you're only allowing yourself to experience it in a solitary sort of way, it is very difficult to have any perspective on the dynamic. And so that is almost, that's what's happening on a microcosmic level, but it's also happening on a macro level as well. And you can see that in the great changes that are coming. Now, within this long period of time, since probably, at least the last 75, 80 years, there has been a whole dynamic of an unconscious movement. All right. If you look back at the moments, the purposeful moments of reality, Korean War, in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the change of the millennium, the selection, the 9/11, the tsunami, all of these dynamics of energy, you can look back at them with a certain dynamic of a certain understanding of 2020 hindsight that you did not have, you did not develop in the moment. If you look at let's take 9/11, for example. If you look at the dynamics of how each of you reacted or responded in your own ways to 9/11, there was what your initial opinion was, but we would suggest to you that any of you that has even looked into it all, that dynamic of that opinion began to shift and change as the complexities of the dynamic became more apparent. And in fact, it is has been much more complex, much more complicated dynamic than has been presented. You have to look at your world and the reflections of your world, and you say, well, how many people have actually accepted the story around 9/11? And we would say it's less than 50%. So, there you have it. But then everything is moving on so quickly that you can't really spend any time in the analysis of the dynamic, because the reflection of your now is hitting you left and right. And there are many reasons for that, and we can go into that in the personal discussions if you wish. But this is a time of chaos. This is a time of, it's almost a melee, in the sense of it is very chaotic, and unfortunately is going to become more chaotic. And also there are so many that are predicting a situation of World War III, and we don't believe it's going to happen. We believe that something miraculous is going to occur that is going to change the dynamic, and it will be within by the 1st of April. And so, you can hold us to that, and you can, on April Fool's Day, you can come to us and say, yeah, wrong, 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 wrong. Or, or not. Or not.